Hello guys, and welcome to yet another video on the Macho Loco channel. And today we'll be discussing the case of 20-year-old Joshua Gimonde, who disappeared on November 9th, 2002 from Collegeville, Minnesota. Joshua was a junior at St. John University in Collegeville, just west of St. Cloud. He was majoring in political science with the hopes of going to law school. He had his future well mapped and was a very good student. St. John University, exclusively for men, is right next to College of Saint Benedict, which is a college exclusively for women. You can find this on the websites of both colleges. Let's read. The student's experience is enlivened by our Catholic and Benedictine tradition and an extraordinary sense of community. This is what they are aspiring to be on their website for the student body. On the night of November 8th, 2002, Joshua went to the Metten Court Apartments on his campus for a card game. Between 11 p.m. and midnight, Joshua got up and left the room. Now, most people at the card game thought he was just going to the bathroom or just stepping out to make a call or something, but he never came back. He never came back to the card game, all right? Joshua had a couple of drinks during the game, but he was certainly not intoxicated. On November 9th, Joshua failed to show up for a school activity. And his roommate did confirm that he never made it back from the card game the night before. So he did not spend any time in his room that night. That was confirmed by his roommate. Joshua did leave his wallet, car, and glasses behind. When everyone realized something is wrong, a huge search was initiated. On November 13th, the National Guard responded with 118 troops and military equipment to aid in the search. There was also aid from the Stearns County Sheriff with canines, horseback searchers, and deputies searching on foot. One of the bloodhounds did track a scent to Stump Lake, which is between Metten Court Apartments and his room. The lake was searched multiple times with zero results, and Joshua's parents made absolutely sure that that he was not in that lake by hiring the Trident Foundation to check the lake again with divers and other helpers. But the second search was again fruitless. Almost from the very beginning, there was an adversarial nature between Joshua's parents and the authorities during the search. It's something we've seen in other cases. Jared Aladero comes to mind right away, right? A future video of mine. Watch for that. Police classified Joshua's case as a missing persons case. His parents, on the other hand, definitely believe he was abducted. He was never found. So in other words, in this particular case, we don't have a body to go off of for any kind of evidence or any kind of closure, unfortunately. So we don't have a body, unfortunately. When we look at the Collegeville topography, looking at the map here, it looks like a very wet, rural, and sparsely populated area, right? Apart from Highway 94 to the northeast of the campus, there's not much here on the map. There's just a bunch of sloughs, lakes, and some shrubs and greenery, right? The camp, and also you can see the camp is almost surrounded by water. There's a lot of water bodies, small, big, medium, that are just all around. So lots of water present, right? Something, again, that's very consistent as a profile point in all of these cases that I'm talking about. I personally don't believe Joshua simply stumbled into some accident by tripping over his feet after consuming a couple of drinks, guys. That doesn't happen. I agree with his parents' opinion that something sudden and unusual happened to Joshua, and we are still to learn what. We have no idea what that was. I'll leave you with one thought that keeps coming back here in these cases. Whenever you read about these cases, guys, you'll often find the writer, either a journalist or some kind of editor or some kind of person that's trying to move this along. Basically, the attitude that we're used to here, nothing to see here, move on. Whenever you read about these cases, right? One of the mistakes that the reporters make is that they take these 2 or 3 drinks that the student had that night and they extrapolate all the way to the fact that the student was totally drunk, barely hanging on for balance and stumbling along, right? Which in 99% of the cases is not true, right? So that's one thing that they do. You'll also read that the accidental drowning is the most common cause of death whenever a body is recovered from any body of water, even if that body of water is at a depth of 3 feet or less, right? So even in some instances there is no water, but it's a dry creek bed or a river bed, right? So it is a low point in the topography, but certainly not something that would cause the person, and that thing in itself is not something that would cause the person to drown, right? Because unless they were fully incapacitated, so they lost control of their limbs or breathing or whatever, then that's the only way they could possibly have drowned, right? But as we all know, just hours before, these people were seen functioning properly, talking to their friends, having fun, walking, dancing, and doing whatever they were doing in a normal way, right? And as you can see, guys, from this reporting, from my reporting, from David Polites' reports, from Guimond and Gilbertson's detailed accounts of some of these cases, the majority of the victims act in a normal, rational manner up to the point of separation. And that point of separation is just as important in the cases in the rural and backpacking areas as it is in the urban centers, as we're seeing in these latest videos, right? The lack of any bruising, defensive wounds, or signs of a fall further suggests that the victims, guys, were not dealt with in a violent manner. So in other words, if someone is taking these people for an amount of time, killing them, and then bringing them to some body of water for disposal, they are not being treated in a physically violent way. We can see this from the evidence, okay? And the evidence is very clear on this point. Very clear. Often when bodies are found, soon enough, of course, the victim is, like the family of the victim is able to have an open casket, right? So I know that's very small consolation, but at least the closure part is there, and the fact that it didn't look like the victim suffered is there, right? So that it's very small consolation, I know. However, we know this from a lot of cases, and we know this from the evidence. The evidence does not lie on this, guys. So again, please post your comments, post your theories. Every time I do a video like this, I make it a point to listen to at least 2 videos where the case was solved, and it was solved by either some very good detective work or some really good help from the public, or some fascinating turn of events with some CCTV cameras or witnesses. And I tried to decipher the difference between what went right in that case for the person for the criminal to be caught, versus these cases where it's never caught. The criminal is never caught. And as a result, guys, I've really gotten really good at noticing that even in the cases that seemed cold and have been cold for decades, the body, when found, was in much worse shape than these bodies in these cases, in these videos that I'm making, Okay, the body of the cases that after 27 years and 30 and DNA analysis was used, which is an amazing tool, right? When we look at those cases where it was solved, those bodies, guys, were a mess. They had stab wounds often. They had ligature marks. They had all kinds of craziness that is not present on these cases that I'm talking about. Okay, so there is a very distinct difference, and obviously you have to get into this topic. If this is your first video listening to me, thank you for being here, and certainly stick around because there's more to come. But my point is, this is a deep, very deep subject that you have to go past the headline, past the subheading, past the body of the article, and then we're like few levels below that in terms of depth of how we get into these things. I promise that the moment the case studies in drowning forensics gets to me, so far I've only been able to read parts of the book, but I will have the whole book this week. So I will make even more detailed analyses of these cases. However, until that happens, guys, I'm more than happy to entertain your theories, your guesses, and especially if you live in these areas. What would also be valuable is feedback from, if you still remember, or you can still have some recollection, like what was the community, other than obviously sadness, what was the atmosphere, and what was the kind of like the morale after very little answers came forth from the authorities. If you could post those below, that would be very much appreciated. Again, I'm not trying to break open new wounds. What I am trying to do is to maybe look at something that wasn't looked at before and see if there's anything that anyone missed. And at the very least, I'm keeping the memory of these victims alive. In this case, Joshua. I mean, it's been almost 20 years, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen, right? This is a tremendously sad story for the college, for the family and friends, and obviously for Joshua. So let's keep digging, guys, and thank you again for spending some time with me, and I will see you in my next video.